Imagine this, you're a battle-hardened German soldier in 1915. You've just unleashed the deadliest chemical weapon ever created. The enemy fortress is silent. Victory is yours. But then, figures begin rising from the poisonous fog. Their skin is melting. Blood pours from their mouths. They're scientifically dead, yet they're charging straight at you, with bayonets raised, screaming with voices that shouldn't exist. Would you stand and fight, or would you run? This isn't fiction. This is the true story of the attack of the dead men. The immovable fortress. In the summer of 1915, the Osowiec Fortress stood as an impossible obstacle for the German Empire. This aging defensive structure controlled the only railway line to Białystok, making it absolutely critical for Germany's eastern advance. For months, German forces had hurled everything they had at these walls, but the fortress refused to fall. The Germans brought in Big Bertha, their massive siege cannon that fired 800-kilogram shells. Day after day, this mechanical monster pounded the fortress into rubble. The concrete walls crumbled. Enormous craters opened in the earth. Thick black smoke choked the sky for weeks. By all military logic, nothing should have survived. Yet somehow, the Russian defenders kept fighting. Machine gun fire erupted from the ruins. Each German infantry assault met fierce resistance. The soldiers inside were starving, running low on ammunition and dressed in rags, but their determination was unbreakable. Field Marshal Paul von Hindenburg was losing patience. Conventional warfare had failed completely, so he made a decision that would cross an ethical line. He would deploy poison gas. Preparing the weapon. Under cover of darkness, Germany's 36th Pioneer Battalion began their deadly work. They carried thousands of iron cylinders filled with liquid chlorine mixed with bromine, a combination chosen for its particularly cruel effects. Chlorine attacks the lungs and eyes, while bromine adds an agonizing irritant component. The pioneers dug special trenches directly facing the Russian lines. 30 gas batteries were installed along an 8-kilometer front. Thousands of steel cylinders were carefully buried and camouflaged with dirt and branches. Every supply pipe was connected with precision. This operation carried enormous risk for the Germans themselves. A single leak or unexpected wind shift could kill their own troops. For days, German soldiers lived alongside these instruments of death, sleeping next to their potential executioners. Gas masks became their most precious possession. By late July, everything was ready. Thousands of tons of poison waited to be released. Now they needed just one thing, the right wind. For several days, the wind blew westward, which would have carried the gas back toward German positions. Commanders obsessively checked weather forecasts. Tension mounted. 7,000 infantry from the 11th Landwehr Division stood ready, waiting for the signal. Then, on August 6th at 4 a.m., the wind shifted east. The green cloud of death. At exactly 4 a.m., a terrible hissing sound shattered the morning silence. Thousands of cylinder valves turned simultaneously. Chlorine and bromine gas erupted under high pressure, forming a dark green wall of fog that rose 12 meters high and stretched 8 kilometers wide. Being heavier than air, the gas crept along the ground like a living thing. It seeped into every trench, every foxhole, every underground bunker where Russian soldiers sheltered. Nature itself reacted to this unnatural poison. Green grass turned black and died instantly. Tree leaves yellowed, withered, and fell in masses. Birds dropped from the sky, frozen in death. Copper buttons and metal equipment turned green from rapid oxidation. The area around Osowiec transformed into a dead, hellish wasteland. Inside the fortress, Russian soldiers woke to burning sensations in their eyes and throats. Panic spread through the defense lines. Most had no gas masks, only worn cloth filters that offered minimal protection. In desperation, soldiers tore off their underwear and uniform pieces. They soaked these cloths in whatever liquid they could find, water from canteens, or even their own urine. These wet rags became their only barrier against the toxic air. What happened next was biological horror. When chlorine gas meets moisture in human lungs, it converts to hydrochloric acid. This acid began eating away lung tissue from the inside. Throat membranes blistered and disintegrated. The pain was beyond imagination. Soldiers coughed violently and uncontrollably. Every breath brought more poison. Every cough expelled fresh blood mixed with chunks of dissolving lung tissue. Exposed skin turned red, swelled, and blistered as though severely burned. Eyes became bloodshot and streamed tears. The trenches became scenes of absolute agony. Hundreds of men lay clutching their throats, coughing wetly, groaning in pain. They were drowning on dry land, their lungs filling with their own bodily fluids. 3 companies of the 226th Zemlyansk Regiment were nearly wiped out within minutes. Most who survived were already dying. The poison had invaded their bodies too deeply. But incredibly, some hearts still beat. Some hands could still grip rifles. They waited in agony, knowing the enemy would soon arrive to finish them. The advance. As the green fog thinned, German commanders ordered the advance. 7,000 infantrymen from the 11th Landwehr Division began marching across no man's land. These were experienced veterans, confident and relaxed. Their rifles hung casually over their shoulders. They believed the hard work was done. Their mission was simple: secure the area and clear out the corpses. The fortress had clearly fallen. The battlefield was eerily silent. Russian barbed wire lay destroyed. The trenches appeared empty and lifeless. German confidence soared as they closed to within meters of the Russian positions. Then the silence broke. From within the chemical-filled trenches, figures began to rise. They emerged slowly from piles of their dead comrades. The German advance halted. Eyes widened in disbelief at what stood before them. About 60 Russian soldiers stood defiantly in the trench line, the last remnants of the 13th Company, Zemlyansk Regiment. But these weren't men. They were something else, the dead who refused to die. Their faces were wrapped in filthy, blood-soaked rags. Fresh blood seeped through the cloth continuously. Their exposed skin appeared greenish-black from severe chemical burns. Their eyes glowed red like something demonic. Uniforms hung in tatters, stained with blood and vomit. Medically speaking, these men were already dead. They were corpses animated purely by willpower. At their lead stood 2nd Lieutenant Vladimir Kotlinski, his broken body still upright. He raised his rifle high and screamed the order to attack. 60 dying men charged at 7,000. They fired wildly. They fixed bayonets. Their war cries were horrifying. Every scream expelled thick blood and chunks of lung tissue. The sounds were wet, hoarse, filled with rage that shouldn't exist in dying throats. This shattered German morale completely. The Landwehr troops, battle-hardened veterans, were struck by primal psychological terror. They weren't seeing ordinary enemies. They were witnessing the dead rising for revenge. Military training evaporated. Ancient fear seized control. The German formation collapsed. Thousands of elite soldiers turned and ran. Mass panic erupted. Men pushed and trampled each other to escape. Many became tangled in their own barbed wire in the chaos. Weapons and equipment were thrown aside to run faster. Seeing the enemy in disarray, the remaining Russian artillery opened fire. 5 cannons launched their last rounds into the fleeing German masses. The field before Osowiec became a slaughterhouse. The counterattack of 60 dying men successfully repelled 7,000. The aftermath. By sunset on August 6, 1915, German troops had retreated far beyond sight. Osowiec Fortress remained in Russian hands, but victory came at a devastating cost. As adrenaline faded, physical reality returned. One by one, the surviving soldiers collapsed. Their bodies finally surrendered to the fatal damage inflicted by the gas. That same night, Lieutenant Vladimir Kotlinski died. He had led the most improbable offensive in modern military history, fulfilling his duty until his final breath. He was buried alongside hundreds of comrades on the land they had defended so fiercely. Russian high command soon evaluated the situation objectively. The fortress had become an uninhabitable, poisoned graveyard. The structures were destroyed. Water sources were contaminated. The air remained toxic. Continuing to defend Osowiec would be pointless suicide. Weeks later, the evacuation order arrived. Before leaving, Russian troops planted explosives throughout the fortress. They demolished their own defensive complex. Towers crumbled to rubble. Armories exploded to dust. They ensured the Germans would find only worthless ruins. The legacy. The attack of the dead men left an indelible mark on World War I history. Germany learned that even the cruelest weapons cannot break determined human spirit. Chemical weapons could destroy lungs and burn skin, but they failed to extinguish the will to resist. This story survives today as a symbol of absolute human resilience. We remember these soldiers not for strategic victories, but for their extraordinary courage. The men of the Zemlyansk Regiment proved that physical defeat doesn't mean the end of resistance. As long as the heart beats, humans can fight even against impossible odds. They were the dead who refused to surrender, and that's why their names live forever. What would you have done facing those burning, bleeding figures emerging from the poison fog? Share your thoughts below, and remember the courage of those who chose to charge when they should have been corpses. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.